A very good evening to all our viewers and welcome to tonight's edition of Primetime News, coming to you live from our Newsfirst studios in Colombo. I'm Arundhati Mudanayaka. Let's start off with a look at the stories making headlines this evening. And now the stories in detail. President Anura Kumara Dissanayake visited the Jayashree Mahabodhi in Anuradhapura this evening and obtained blessings.
The President, who visited Anuradhapura, called on Atamasthanaadhipati Venerable Pallegama Hemratana Thera. Thereafter, he visited the Jayashree Mahabodhi and engaged in religious observances. President Anura Kumara Dissanayake then called on Chief Incumbent of the Ruwanweli Mahasaya, Venerable Ithala Watunuwave ඥානතිලක Thera. He thereafter engaged in religious observances at the Ruwanweli Mahasaya.
President Anura Kumara Dissanayake also called on the chief prelates of the Ramanya sect and the Amarapura sect today.
President Anura Kumara Dissanayake visited the headquarters of the Sri Lanka Ramanya Mahasect in Narahempita this morning. He called on the chief prelate of the Sri Lanka Ramanya Mahasect, Most Venerable Makulave Vimalanayaka Thera, and received his blessings. The deputy chief prelates, secretarial theras, and other senior monks of the Ramanya sect were also present. The President engaged in a brief discussion with the Chief Prelate and the Mahasangha regarding the current economic, social and political situation in the country.
අපි රත්නත්‍රය ආශිර්වාදයේ ප්‍රාර්ථනා කරන අපේ මහානායක මහේපාණන් වහන්සේ ප්‍රදාන අපේ නිකායේම ආශිර්වාදයේ පළ කරනු ලබනවා වත්මන් අපේ ජනාධිපතිතුමන්ට රටේ ජනතාව බලාපොරොත්තු වෙච්ච විදිහටත් ඒ වගේම ඔබතුමාලා ඉදිරිපත් කරපු එම ප්‍රතිපත්ති ප්‍රකාශන වලට අනුකූලවත් මේ රට වෙනුවෙන් උදාර කාර්යභාරයක් සිද්ධ වෙයි කියන බලාපොරොත්තුවක් දෙනෝ දහක් ජනතාව තුල පවතිනවා.
තානාපතිවරු පත් කරනකොට ජන උදක් ඒ රටවලට ගැලපෙන උදක් පිළිසක් පත් කරගන්න. ආණ්ඩුකාරවරු පත් කරනකොට දේශපාලන හිතන්නේ නැතුව වැඩක් කරන්න පුළුවන් පිළිසක් ඒ ප්‍රදේශවලට පත් කිරීම. ඊළඟට ඉතින් අමාත්‍යාංශවල ඒකන්වරු පත් කරනකොට ඒවට ගැලපෙන සුදුසු අය පත් කිරීම. අපි මේක තමයි කලින් ඉල්ලුවේ.
කොහොමද අපි අර මැතිවරණ ඉදිරිපත් ප්‍රතිපත්ති ප්‍රකාශනය මත පදනම් සමය වැඩ කරන්න සූදානම්. මහමැතිවරණ පසුව තමයි ටිකක් වැඩිපුර අපි ඒකට ගැඹුරු ප්‍රතිසංස්කරණ කරනවා කියලා කල්පනා කරලා තියෙනවා. වෙන සීට් තැන්ගෙන ඒකට අපිට ආලයක් අවශ්‍යයි මම.
නෑ හැමදාම ඉතින් මේ දවස් දෙක තුනක කරන්න බෑ.
President Anura Kumara Dissanayake then visited the headquarters of the Amarapura Mahasect located in Velavatta. He received blessings from the acting chief prelate of the Amarapura Mahasect, Most Venerable Karagoda Uyangoda Maitri Murthy Mahanayaka Thera. The Nayaka Theras of the Secretariat of the Amarapura Mahanikaya were also present.
විසිදෙවින්ද විශාල කලබල ඇති වෙනවා, ලේ වැගිරීම ඇති වෙනවා, අනිත් පෙරහැර නැත කරනවා, අනිත් පාක්ෂික දේවල් වලට ගිලා කරදර කරනවා වගේ ඒවා කිව්වට ලංකාවේ පළවෙනි වතාවට මැතිවරණයෙන් පසු තිබුණු සාමකාමී තත්ත්වයක් නිර්මාණය කරනවා. ඒක නම් වැදගත් දාන්න. අපේ රටේ දැන් මේ ආණ්ඩු ව්‍යවස්ථාව 21 වතාවක් සංශෝධනය වුණා. ඒකෙන් අවස්ථා 3ක් හැර 17, 19, 21 කියන සංශෝධන 3 හැර අනිත් ඔක්කොම සංශෝධන වෙලා තිබෙන්නේ ඒ වෙලාවේ බලයේ හිටපු දේශපාලන ව්‍යාපාරේ වමනාව. ඒ නිසා ව්‍යවස්ථාවල මුළු ජනතාවගේ වමනාවන් නියෝජනය කරන වෙනුවට ඒ වෙලාවේ ආණ්ඩු බලයේ ඉන්න අයගේ වමනාවන් නියෝජනය කරන විදිහට ව්‍යවස්ථාව හැදිලා තියෙනවා. ඒ ව්‍යවස්ථාවේ යම් පැටලෙවිලි ජනතාවගේ අයිතිවාසිකම් පුළුල් වී කිනිස්ථාවක ඉඳගෙන අපි අලුත් ආණ්ඩු ව්‍යවස්ථාවක් හදන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා. ඒ මොන ආණ්ඩු ව්‍යවස්ථාවක් හදුවත් අනිවාර්යයෙන් ජනතාවගේ ජනමත විචාරණකින් සම්මත කරගත යුතුයි. දැන් අපේ රටේ මෙතෙක් හැදුණු කිසි ආණ්ඩු ව්‍යවස්ථාවක් ජනමත විචාරණයකින් සම්මත වුණේ නැහැ. නමුත් අපි හිතන්නේ අපේ රට ජනතාවගේ මූලික නීතිය ආණ්ඩු ව්‍යවස්ථාව. ඒ ජනතාව ඒ නීතියට එකඟද නැද්ද කියලා විමසන්න ඕනකම තියෙනවා. ඒ වගේම 78 ආණ්ඩු ව්‍යවස්ථාවෙත් මේ ව්‍යවස්ථාව පරික්ෂණ කරලා අලුත් ව්‍යවස්ථාවක් ගෙනවන ජනමත විචාරණයට ආයිතුවක් තිබෙන නිසා අපි හදන ව්‍යවස්ථාව ජනමත විචාරණ කරලා සම්මත කර ගැනීම තමයි අපේ අපේක්ෂාව සහ බලාපොරොත්තු.
During a recent visit to Sri Lanka, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar conveyed the potential conversion of $20 million in payments for completed line of credit projects into grants. The Indian External Affairs Ministry issued a statement outlining the discussions that took place during the minister's one-day visit to Sri Lanka.
In discussions with Foreign Minister Vijay Herath, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar reaffirmed India's commitment to enhancing bilateral cooperation, including a $61.5 million grant for the Kankasanthure port modernization and gifting of 22 diesel locomotives to Sri Lankan Railways. They also discussed the potential conversion of $20 million in payments for completed line of credit projects into grants. With President Anurukumara Dissanayake, he highlighted ongoing initiatives in energy, digital infrastructure and health, noting that India's support is vital for Sri Lanka's economic prosperity. The President also mentioned the potential for exporting renewable energy to India. The External Affairs Minister reaffirmed India's early and ongoing support for the island nation's economic recovery, noting India's role as the first country to provide financial assurances that enabled the IMF's extended fund facility. He confirmed India's commitment to expediting its bilateral memorandum of understanding with Sri Lanka regarding debt management. The External Affairs Minister addressed concerns about Indian fishermen detained in Sri Lanka, advocating for their quick release and the humanitarian approach to livelihood issues. He also reiterated India's support for Sri Lanka's debt restructuring efforts. Addressing the ethnic issue and reconciliation, Dr. Jaishankar voiced India's support for the aspirations of all Sri Lankan communities, including Tamils, for equality and justice, while advocating for the full implementation of the 13th Amendment to the Constitution and the prompt holding of provincial council elections. Dr. S. Jaishankar also extended an invitation from Prime Minister Narendra Modi for President Anurukumara Dissanayake to visit India, emphasizing the importance of continued collaboration.
How did Sri Lanka end up in its current situation? Who is responsible for that? Are corruption, fraud and wastage not factors that contributed to the country's downfall? What exactly happened to Sri Lanka? Today, Newsfirst delves into the disastrous impact on the country's food production and the nutritional status of the population, as well as the national economy, due to the abrupt disruption of the smooth supply of fertilizer caused by an irrational decision, which ultimately led to corrupt and fraudulent process.
What happened to Sri Lanka?
On the 21st of April, then-President Gotabaya Rajapaksa released a gazette abruptly banning the importation of chemical fertilizers to Sri Lanka. This resulted in the destruction of cultivations of paddy, tea, vegetables and decorative flowers, as well as the sudden spike of prices. It did not require an academic to deem this decision a destructive one. Even the farmers of this country, who dealt with nature and cultivations all their lives, knew that this decision would only lead the country into an abyss. The Gotabaya Rajapaksa administration claimed that the ban on the importation of chemical fertilizers would save dollars. This leads to the real question: did the government save any dollars through this? Or, by allowing the black market to flourish under this crisis, did the government lose the dollars it already had? Let's dive in. The then government, led by Gotabaya Rajapaksa, following the new ban on chemical fertilizer, decided to import organic fertilizer from China. The vessel carrying the stock of organic fertilizer that had been ordered departed China even before the quarantine certificate for export was issued. However, the shocking discovery of harmful bacterial components in the fertilizer samples gave rise to a brand new crisis. The Attorney General also said that instead of importing the stock of organic fertilizer in compliance with the existing laws, the concerned Chinese company and the government had bent the laws to suit the importation procedure. Although Sri Lankan farmlands did not get even a particle of this organic fertilizer, the country had paid $6.9 million to the Chinese vessel. How exactly did this scam take place? The Chinese company Qingdao Sivin Biotech Group stepped forward to provide Sri Lanka with organic fertilizer manufactured using seaweed. Although the company was given the tender, the National Plant Quarantine Service in 2 occasions confirmed that this fertilizer contained harmful bacterial components. However, disregarding this warning and without the approval of the National Plant Quarantine Service, the Hippospate vessel reached Sri Lanka carrying 20,000 metric tons of organic fertilizer. Who granted approval for the opening for the letter of credit before the stock of fertilizer was checked is a question that is unanswered to this date. In order to give a quarantine certificate of export for the importation of fertilizer, the relevant company first needs to obtain clearance from the National Plant Quarantine Service. Later, the Chinese vessel changed its name, dropped off the radar of satellite navigation systems, and remained in the Sea of Sri Lanka for many days before departing the island. However, the Chinese vessel had not yet concluded its business. As per the agreement reached, we ended up paying $6.9 million to the Chinese vessel, and the Chinese company also took back the bond guarantee of $5 million deposited to the country. That's not all. They now say that they should be paid $8 million more for the loss that they incurred. As an alternative, they propose for a final decision on this transaction be reached. At a point where our dollar reserves were almost exhausted, we had to pay $6.9 million for a lost cause. In the end, we lost the dollars we had, and our country's agricultural sector also took a heavy blow. What happened afterwards? Our country then went on to purchase Indian-manufactured liquid nano-nitrogen fertilizer at a price much higher than the selling price in India itself. And did this solve the problem? No tender process was followed for the importation of liquid nano-nitrogen fertilizer from India. Then officers in charge of the Colombo Commercial Fertilizer Limited, which imported the fertilizer stock, claimed that there was no opportunity to carry out any study prior to the importation. They also said that this transaction took place with the intervention of one of the country's highest-ranked government officials. The Sri Lankan Cabinet of Ministers had initially granted approval for the relevant Indian company to directly carry out the transaction. However, the officials said that upon the intervention of this high-ranked government official, the decision had been reversed and the letters of credit were opened under the name of a local company. It was as per this change of plan that the letters of credit were opened under the name of the company named United Farmers Trust. Then officials of Commercial Fertilizers Limited also revealed that due to the company's lack of US dollars from the central bank's dollar reserves were deposited to an account of the company's owner. Then, the Sri Lankan Ministry of Agriculture ordered approximately 2.1 million litres of liquid nano-nitrogen fertilizer from the Indian Farmers Fertilizer Cooperative in Gujarat, India. The first stock was sent by air. 500 milliliters of this experimental liquid nano-nitrogen fertilizer was purchased at $12.45. According to the exchange rates at the time, that was about 2,520 rupees. However, in India, 500 milliliters was sold at $3.23, which was about 654 rupees. What happened in the end was that the Sri Lankan government ended up paying about 1,867 rupees extra for every 500 milliliter fertilizer purchased. When calculating the total amount of extra cost incurred using the quantity of fertilizer ordered, that was about 7.841 billion rupees at the time. And that's not all. The initiative suddenly implemented by the then government to promote the use of organic fertilizer was also heavy on fraud and corruption. The liquid organic fertilizer manufactured in a rush was substandard and dogs would consume the crops to which fertilizer was sprayed. Farmers said that adding this fertilizer to their cultivations only posed an additional threat from dogs. Let's consider just one example for the frauds that took place when manufacturing the liquid organic fertilizer. It was reported that the cabinet had granted approval for 700 million rupees to be obtained from the Land Reform Commission to carry out a fertilizer program under a former minister in mid-2021. It was also reported that this project was proposed to be implemented island-wide, but initially 35 large-scale projects would be implemented within the North Central province. However, 1 year later it was announced that 2 billion rupees was taken from the Land Reform Commission instead of 700 million rupees, and that amount too had not been paid back. This is just one such fraud. What happened due to these frauds? The UN World Food Programme said that 5 million people in Sri Lanka skip meals and go to sleep in hunger. Food inflation continues to rise. The country declared bankruptcy. If the right decisions were taken at the time, we would not have faced this crisis in the first place. Those who made the wrong decisions and are accused of that are living luxurious lives, not facing any consequences. What steps were taken against them? As much as it is important to take action against those who led the country into this crisis, we should also keep in mind the lessons learned from the past when making decisions now and even in the future.
What happened to Sri Lanka?
Also in local news, DIG Dhammika Priyantha has been appointed as the head of the State Intelligence Service. He previously served as the officer in charge of the Criminal Investigation Department and the Financial Crimes Investigation Unit. Also, Acting Inspector General of Police Priyantha Veerasurya said that the recently held presidential election had the fewest incidents of post-election violence in the history of the Sri Lankan police.
The renovated Kalkuda police station was declared open by the Acting Inspector General of Police Priyantha Veerasurya today.
Those who have been in service for a long time, maybe 35 or 36 years, know very well that the most difficult period after a political power transition is a post-election period. I have been in service for about 36 years, around the same duration as Ajit Rohana throughout that entire period. This year we witnessed the most peaceful post-election period I have ever seen. This has taught us a new lesson and even given our society a brand new culture. We need to maintain this in the future. It is the Sri Lanka police that benefits the most from this change. We as police officers need to be thankful to the political authorities that made this possible in the first place, for ensuring a smooth and peaceful post-election period. Also during the presidential election, the Sri Lanka police displayed much efficiency, experience and professionalism. With the help of all authorities involved, we were able to restore the reputation and public image of the police that has been commended both locally and internationally. We should be proud about that.
Sri Lanka decides.
One recognized political party and 3 independent groups have submitted their nominations for the general election 2024. 122 independent groups have deposited bonds for the general election. A special security program is in place during the acceptance of nominations for the general election 2024. Meanwhile, the police say that demonstrations are not allowed during the final days of nomination submissions. Nominations will be accepted until noon on the October 11th. Meanwhile, Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna General Secretary Sagar Karyawasam said that the SLPP and the Mahajana Eksat Peramuna led by Dinesh Gunawardena are holding discussions to form an alliance. He made this statement joining the interviews to select candidates to contest under the SLPP and at the upcoming general election. SLPP leader former President Mahinda Rajapaksa was also in attendance.
The preliminary stage of interviews to select SLPP candidates for several districts, including Colombo, were held today.
නැවත ජයග්‍රාහී මගට ගන්න මොකක්ද ඇත්තටම කළ යුත්තේ ඔබතුමා විශ්වාස කරන්නේ?
නෑ ඉතින් අපි අපේක්ෂකයෝ කැප වෙලා වැඩ කරොත් ඒක ප්‍රශ්නයක් වෙන්නේ නැහැ අපිට. දැනට තියෙන තත්ත්වය හදනවා හොඳයි. හැබැයි මහන්සි වෙන්න ඕන හොඳයි කියලා අත්තකට වෙලායි.
ජනාධිපතිවරණයේ වෙච්ච පසුබෑමත් එක්ක කොහොමද ඒක?
ඊතරම්ම බලපාන්නේ ගන්න නැහැ නේ මේකේ මහමැතිවරණේ තියන්නේ ඊට වඩා වෙනස්නේ. ජනාධිපතිවරණේ එක්කෙනෙක් තරඟ කරනවා කොළඹ ඉඳගෙන. මේකෙදි ගමේ කට්ටිය තමයි තරඟ කරන්නේ. ඉතින් ගමේ සම්බන්ධයෙන්ද වැඩියෙන් වැඩ කරයි.
පුවත්පත් වාර්තා කළ තිබුණා දින දිනේෂ් ගුණවර්ධන මහත්මයාත් එක්ක ඔබතුමා මොනවල සාකච්ඡා කරා කියලා.
දිනේෂ් ගුණවර්ධන මහත්මයා සමග සාකච්ඡා කරා එතුමාගේ පක්ෂය මහජන එක්සත් පෙරමුණ සහ අපගේ පක්ෂය එකතු වීම සම්බන්ධයෙන් ඒ සම්බන්ධයෙන් නම් ගැටලුවක් නැහැ. නමුත් එතෙන්දී වෙනත් මහජන එක්සත් පෙරමුණ සමග එකතු වෙලා ඉන්න සමහරක් පිරිස් සම්බන්ධයෙන් සාකච්ඡා වුණා. ඒ සම්බන්ධයෙන් තාම අපිට අවසන් තීරණයකට එන්න හැකියාවක් ලැබිලා නැහැ. ඒ සාකච්ඡා තවදුරටත් පැවැත්වෙනවා.
Many, including former SLPP MPs, joined the interview day of the SLPP.
තව සතුරු දවසක් විශාල කණ්ඩායමක් ඇවිල්ලා.
Dr. Harsha De Silva revealed that there is a conspiracy to defeat him in the upcoming general election.
At a media briefing held at the SJB headquarters, journalists raised questions on media reported quoting statements by Dr. Harsha De Silva.
Podcast එකෙන් කැලලක් අල්ලගෙන headline එකක් ගහලා. ඊපට මම ඉන්ටර්විව් එකක් දුන්නේ නැහැ. දැන් මෙතන වෙලා තියෙන්නේ හර්ෂ ඩිසිල්වට ගහන එකනේ තියෙන්නේ. හර්ෂ ඩිසිල්ව ගහලා වට්ටන්න. හතර වටේම හර්ෂ ඩිසිල්වට ගහන එක තමයි වෙන්නේ. හරි හර්ෂ ඩිසිල්ව පාර්ලිමේන්තුවට අනේක නවත්තන්න. මොන ක්‍රමෙන් හරි හර්ෂ ඩිසිල්ව පාර්ලිමේන්තුවට අරින්න එපා. ඒකනේ මේ කරන්න හදන්නේ. මේ පෙහෙල්ල කරපු වැඩ. දැන් මොනවට කරාද කියලා මේක ඕන බුද්ධිමත් මිනිහෙන්ට තේරෙනවා. මට හතර වටෙන් ගහන්නේ ඇයි? ඇයි මට හතර වටෙන් ගහන්නේ? හතර වටෙන් ගහන්නේ කොහොමාරි මේ ඡන්දේ මාව පරද්දන්න. ඔක තේරුම් ගන්න බැරිද? හර්ෂ ඩිසිල්ව කොළඹින් පරද්දන්නනේ මේ වැඩේ. මලන්නේ ඒක. නමුත් ඒක තමයි මේ කරන්න උත්සාහ කරන්නේ. ප්‍රශ්නයක් නෑ අපි බලමු. අපි බලමු මොකද වෙන්නේ කියලා කොළඹ.
Saman Ratnapriya said that the group contesting at the general election under the gas cylinder symbol will prepare and finalize their nomination lists by next Monday.
The leader of the Samagi Jana Balawege has no intention of holding elections and forming a government. He has another phobia. Because of that phobia, we were not able to form any alliance with the Samagi Jana Balawege now. Today and tomorrow, the parties will prepare the nominations in a quota system and will finalize them based on the district system. With that being finalized, it will be possible to finalize the nominations by Monday.
A party meeting was held today at Prasanna Ranthunga's office in Gampaha to clarify details about the upcoming general elections.
A number of former parliamentarians who left the SLPP to back Ranil Wickremesinghe attended the meeting.
පහුගිය ජනාධිපතිවරණයෙන් පස්සේ අපි නිහඬයි කියලා.
We received a letter yesterday asking us why we have been quiet since the presidential election. Our party held a discussion acknowledging that if our party splits, it would be difficult for us. We also discussed about which opposition party would be more suitable to join in. The SJB discussed with the UNP. Our party discussed with the leftist party. By the end of the meeting, we came to an agreement. As everyone who supported Ranil Wickremesinghe, we must come together and stand united.
Although the political parties agreed to contest under the symbol of the gas cylinder, United National Party chairman Vajirabe Vardhana said that the party will contest under the symbol of the elephant in some districts.
එක්සත් ජාතික පක්ෂයේ ප්‍රමුඛ සන්ධානය රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ නායකතුමාගේ ප්‍රධානත්වයෙන් දේශපාලන පක්ෂ විශාල ප්‍රමාණයක් සාකච්ඡා කරමින් නාම යෝජනා මණ්ඩල රැස් වෙමින් තිබෙනවා. මේ සතියේ මැදවන විට එහි සියලු කටයුතු අවසන් කිරීමට බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා. අවසාන එකකතාවේ සියලු දෙනා විශේෂයෙන් සිලින්ඩර් යටතේ තරඟ කරන්නත් වන්නිය ප්‍රදේශයට අලිය ලකුණ යටතේ තරඟ කරන්නත් නුවරඑළිය දිස්ත්‍රික්කයට අලිය ලකුණ යටතේ තරඟ කිරීමටත් සාකච්ඡා වෙමින් තිබෙනවා. ඒ අවසාන වීමට නියමිතව තිබෙනවා.
Newsfirst with the people.
The Ministry of Agriculture has announced the launch of a special program aimed at fulfilling the annual requirements for various crops including grains in the country. According to Secretary MPNM Wickremesinghe, the initiative will be implemented during the upcoming Maha season.
The annual harvest of various grains including maize, undu, green grams and peanut remains insufficient to meet the country's consumption needs according to the Ministry of Agriculture. Secretary MPNM Wickramasinghe highlighted that the nation is forced to spend a significant amount on importing these grains each year. For example, the country requires 6 metric tons of maize annually, yet domestic production only covers 3 metric tons. In response, the Ministry of Agriculture plans to implement a comprehensive strategy aimed at increasing the cultivation of these crops.
You're with News First. The Mass Media Club of University of Moratuwa organized its inter-school and inter-university media competition Mora Lens Media Awards 2024 at the University of Moratuwa today.
One of Sri Lanka's premier inter-school and inter-university competition for announcing, photography and videography, Mora Lens Media Awards 2024, organized by the Mass Media Club of the University of Moratuwa, was held for the second consecutive time at the university premises today. "75 competitors who competed in the final rounds of the competition from all across the island in the categories of announcing, photography and videography were also awarded at the event.
ඊළඟට අවසන් වටේට තේරීපත් වූ
විශ්වවිද්‍යාලංශ නියෝජනය කරමින් ජයග්‍රහණය ඉදිරියේ තමන්ගේ නම සනිටුහන් කරගන්නේ HTSM ජයවර්ධන NSBM Green University.
The official media partners of the event were Sirasa TV, Shakti TV and Newsfirst.
Moving on to news overseas, the Israeli military has struck a mosque beside a hospital in South Lebanon, adding to a growing list of civilian infrastructure it has targeted in the country.
The Salah Gandour hospital said 9 of its medical and nursing staff were wounded by heavy strikes, most of them seriously, after it received an Israeli warning to evacuate. The Israeli military claimed Hezbollah fighters were present inside the mosque when it was targeted, but no evidence has been given. Lebanon's state-run national news agency reported that the grounds of the hospital in the southern town of Bin Peel were subjected to Israeli shelling. Meanwhile, the UN Special Rapporteur for Occupied Palestinian Territories said Palestine and Lebanon have effectively become places where there are no civilians in the eyes of the Israeli military. An investigation by Palestinian sources has uncovered evidence, including videos, where Israeli commanders and soldiers explain how they shoot at unarmed civilians in war zones. In another development, the United Nations peacekeeping force in Lebanon said it will not leave positions in the country's south, despite the Israeli military telling it to relocate. The UN interim force in Lebanon said in a statement that the Israeli military notified it of an intention to launch a ground invasion of Lebanon and requested UN forces to leave. It added that peacekeepers remain in all positions and the UN flag continues to fly. The UN's Agency for Palestinian Refugees reported that a second consecutive week of intense Israeli airstrikes across Lebanon has driven more people from their homes, with attacks affecting central Beirut and Palestinian refugee camps.
And in sports news, Australia women won the 5th match of Group A of the ICC Women's T20 World Cup by 6 wickets.
The match got underway in Sharjah. Winning the toss, Sri Lanka decided to bat first. Sri Lanka's innings was opened by captain Chamariyatapattu and Wishmi Gunaratne. Wishmi Gunaratne was the first to depart without scoring. Chamariyatapattu was dismissed for 3 runs by Ashley Gardner. Kavisha Delhari made 5 runs while Harshita Samaravikrama contributed 23. Nilakshika Silva remained unbeaten on 29. Sri Lanka managed to score only 93 runs for the loss of 7 wickets in their allotted 20 overs. Australia's innings were opened by captain Elisa Healy and Beth Mooney. Udeshika Prabodhani dismissed Elisa Healy for 4 runs. Georgia Waham made 3 runs. Beth Mooney remained unbeaten on 43, leading Australia to victory. Australia women claimed victory in the match with only 4 wickets lost in 14 overs and 2 balls.
And with that, we wrap up tonight's edition of Primetime News. Thank you very much for joining us. Good night.